Hey guys, Aaron here, and what I want to do is just kind of talk about the bow drill as a friction fire method and talk about some of the basic construction of the bow drill, what materials to use, and how to actually do it as far as technique goes. I'm out here, I'm in Houston, that's where I live, and it's about 100 degrees right now, so I'm just pouring sweat and mosquitoes are everywhere, so I want to get a fire going for sure, keep these mosquitoes at bay. So let me just sit down and discuss everything. So for those of you that don't know, and I'm sure a lot of you already know if you're watching these kinds of videos, the bow drill, in my opinion, is the least labor intensive way to make a fire with friction. The reason for this is that there's a combination, there's multiple components to the bow drill, and basically these increase your amount of friction with minimal effort. Basically you're just stabilizing and locking the drill and handhold, and you're moving the bow back and forth vigorously until you produce a coal. Now wood has to reach 800 degrees Fahrenheit before a coal is produced. One tip to bear in mind is that even when you reach that point, you want to continue to actually use the bow drill as much as you can. Some people just stop as soon as they see that coal form. I keep going. That way, if there's any error as far as the dust not collecting as well, you want to make sure that basically that you're basically going as fast as you can to produce a good coal, a good sized coal. About a dime to a quarter size coal would be preferable. This gives you more coal to work with, especially if your tender bundle isn't all that great. So one of the first components of the bow drill is the bow. The bow is about from the tip of your fingers, I do, to the back of my neck. So about 2.5 to 3 feet long. The bow can be made from any material. It can be made from green wood. It can be made from dry wood. And you want some sort of flexibility. I know some guys out there, they just use a slightly curved bow, and then, you know, of course, the cordage, the rope, the string. I prefer a little bit spring in my bow, and that's why I cut green wood. And you do want some sort of slight curve, so any sapling will do. And I haven't mentioned this, but as far as making this kind of fire with stone tools, it's actually very doable. It'll only take a little extra time with stone tools to actually procure a bow drill set. Now I want to get into woods before I actually start to talk about the bow, the first component. Given the moisture content of any wood, you know, most woods, when they're freshly cut green, start anywhere from 30 to 40% moisture content. That's all the water content inside the wood. That would be impossible to create fire with green wood like that. Even with the most vigorous strokes of the bow drill, you wouldn't be able to produce a coal. So the moisture content is critical. When you're looking for bow drill material, you're going to want to look in spots that are high and dry, off the ground, preferably, exposed to sunlight, away from water sources if you can. This will ensure that their moisture content is probably going to be low enough to make a friction fire set. Now, the ideal friction fire moisture content, which you won't be able to measure in the field, is about 4 to 5%. But most woods are around the 8% range, which is fine. So as far as the material you're going to want to use for the bow drill, cedar, basswood, cottonwood, various softwoods like that, conifers. Some conifers like pine, they have a lot of resin inside the wood, so they usually don't produce the best kind of friction fire. At least from my personal experience, I've had difficulty with pine. But keep in mind the medium, the soft woods, birch, like I said, basswood, cottonwood, stuff like that, and you want it as dry as possible. One thing to do if you have time and you're just practicing your skills, you know, this may not be applicable in a survival situation, but is to lay your wood material after you've cut it, lay it in a dry spot in the sun for 2 to 3 hours, even 4 hours, and this will help absorb and evaporate some of the moisture content in that wood, which will help produce a friction fire better. So we've talked about the bow. You want a 2.5 to 3 foot long, about 1/2 inch sapling. with a slight curve if you can. And as far as the cordage material, I'm using a 550, a cheap version of the 550 paracord. Yes, it's not primitive, but right now I don't have this particular 7 to 8 acre spot of forest I have does not have any local vegetation to make cordage with. There's no basswood, there's no dogbane, which dogbane is not really a native species to Texas. Right now in this particular environment, I do not have the materials to make cordage. So I'm using a 550 paracord. Natural fiber material works. You can use rawhide, you can use plant fibers. They will degrade slightly faster than a modern fiber, but at the same time they will still work. You can make a 2-ply string that's thick enough and long enough within 45 minutes to an hour to produce a bow drill cordage kit or piece. And as far as securing, you want to make some notches. They don't have to be pretty, they don't have to be perfect. You can see the notches right there. You're just going to take your stone flake or saw or your knife and just carve that in so that the string has somewhere to rest on. If you don't, the string's going to slide up and down when you're actually putting friction on this bow drill set. And then I just wrap it around a few times and do an overhand knot basically and secure it. As far as the tightness of the string, some people like it very loose to where there's just enough tension. I like a lot of tension on my bow drill set, so I get this to a point where it bends the green sapling and there's a twang to it. There's a lot of tension. The more tension you have, for instance, what I'll do is I'll take the drill, which I'll get into in a second, and I will test out to see if it'll actually wrap around. If not, I have to readjust. And this one's perfect. Just enough tension. All right, so getting to the second component, which is one of two very, very important components, is the actual drill. The drill itself is about 1/2 inch to 3/4 inch diameter. It's about 8 to 10 inches long. The longer you get a combination of stability, but more chances for that drill to kick out of the baseboard, which we'll touch up on here in a bit. And basically, we've taken a branch from, all my kit is made from black willow. So I've taken that, I've removed the bark. I've let it sit in the sun for 3 to 4 hours to get rid of some of that moisture content. I've got an 8.5 inch spindle. One thing you're going to want to do once you've got your material sized, and you know what, I'm gonna go and wipe this. I got some bear grease on my knife. I don't want that to interfere with the friction. So you're going to choose one end. One end is going to be the part that actually produces the friction. You do not want any form of water or grease to touch this part of the drill. That's why when it's damp outside, you want to layer the ground with any dry material you have at hand. If it comes in contact with moisture or grease, that's going to reduce friction and make it a hell of a lot harder for you to produce fire. So we've got our end. We want this to be flat. So I'll take my knife or whatever you have, piece of flint, whatever, and you're just going to try to make this flat. You're going to be careful and work around. And as you can see, this drill's been used. So I'm gonna go ahead and cut this video short, and that way it's not too long, and I'll jump into the second part, and then we'll work our way to building a fire. So hopefully you found some of this information useful, the types of woods, the first component of the bow drill, which is the actual bow, the cordage, and various things like that. All right guys, see you soon.